Hello, and welcome to the podcast that knows, despite the push notifications we get all day telling us that the world is burning down around us, there is still good being created in the world, and we want to highlight it. Whether it's nonprofit leaders solving the world's biggest problems or a small business owner trying to make the world better with a great product or service, we want to highlight the ideas and strategies behind the good that's being made. So without further ado, you're listening to Creating Good, a podcast by Rogue Creatives hosted by me, Matt Barnes. Let's go. Holy moly, it's another episode of Creating Good with Matt Barnes. And I, of course, am Matt Barnes. You can find me anywhere online at Matt from Rogue. That's where I am. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the places. Threads. Threads is fun. Anyway, I'm excited. We've got a great episode today. Again, just the opportunity to highlight people who are creating good in the world. And we want you to be a part of that. We want you to take the Creating Good pledge that we have at creatinggood.co/pledge. It's simple. It's just saying you're going to use what you have to create good in the world. And you can put the badge on your website. Spread the word. We want more people dedicated to creating good in the world, because we know that just, using what we have to add to the world instead of just take from it can make such a huge difference. And it doesn't have to be a whole life change. It doesn't have to be starting a business necessarily or anything. It really can just be, how can I use what I have, my relationships, my experiences, my talents, to come together with other people and see what can we do to make the world just a little bit better, because it needs to be a little bit better. We got kids and a generation coming up that needs and deserves a better world. So let's give it to them. And I love hearing the stories of people who are doing that. Like today's guest, Justine Palmore. She is the executive director for StandUp For Kids Orange County, right here in Orange County, California. She brings over 18 years of dedicated service in the nonprofit sector. She passionately has been working to end youth homelessness. And under her leadership, StandUp For Kids has championed innovative programs and fostered crucial community partnerships, significantly impacting the lives of at-risk youth. She's awesome. I mean, and she's kind of operating in my backyard. There's things that are happening here that I didn't even know about. I love hearing this stuff. It's so encouraging to know that people like Justine are out there making the world a better place. And it reminds me that we can do that too, that we have the ability to use what we have to make a difference. Even if we're not the executive director of a nonprofit, we have this ability. I'm here with Justine Palmore from StandUp For Kids. Thank you so much for being here, Justine.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, before we jump into the meat of this thing, we always open with a segment we call 3 random questions. So we have a list of many, many random questions, and we randomly choose 3 of them. You ready?
Oh, boy. Yeah.
You're going to do great.
This is a setup.
Never. Only for good. Okay. If you could only eat one cuisine for the rest of your life, what would it be? Like Italian or Mexican? Italian? Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good, right? Mm-hmm. What's your favorite Italian dish?
Lasagna.
Oh, it's so good. You know, when I was in Florence, I had a pesto lasagna, and I'd never even heard of that. And it was the most delicious thing. One of the most delicious things I've ever had in my life. It was so good. Got to get the recipe for that thing. All right. What is your favorite fiction book and why?
Oh, gosh. Probably Jackie Collins series. Right. That's what I can remember reading. I read a lot when I was younger. I would travel on the subway in New York. So reading was a big thing. And it was always like the smuttiest books I could find. like the drama.
That's funny. You got to keep yourself entertained, right? Like when you're taking those long trips. All right. Last one. If they were to make a film about your life, who would you like to play you?
Oh my gosh. Probably Sandra Bullock.
Oh, she'd be great. She's awesome. That'd be a good one. Good choice. Excellent choice. I judge your answers as very worthy, and we will continue with the interview. Thanks for playing along. I'm excited to hear about your journey. What is your origin story? Where'd you get started? How'd you end up where you're at now?
Oh, wow. I started with the organization in 2006. My kids were in high school. One of my sons was going off to the military. I was single at the time and working in ministry at a church, a local church, and I gravitated towards the youth ministry and working with youth. And I did some event planning for them, and I taught some Sunday school, and I was inspired by the leadership there to go back to school. Excuse me. I am an accountant by trade.
Okay, so you were saying you were inspired by the leadership at the church you were at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was I am an accountant, and
Okay.
that's been my field since I graduated high school.
You're an accountant.
Yeah, I'm an accountant. And so my kids were, high school, needing mom less. I was thinking about the future. I enjoyed working with youth. So I went back to school. I started at Saddleback and I did an associate's degree in human services to see what I could do if I liked the field. And then I transferred into a 4-year school and ended up getting my bachelor's. I'm more of a generalist. And I started here as an intern 18 and a half years ago. And I dove right in, and my first day I met a young man that was 16, and he had nowhere to go. His parents were immigrants from another country, and they basically packed up and left him. And he was in Irvine in a park, and he met a girl from UCI online, and she brought him home, and the father worked at UCI, and he called into us. And so that was my first experience with a youth that had been abandoned. And I loved the organization because at that time there were, 3 volunteers, and it was 100% volunteer driven. Wow. And so I ended up staying after my internship. I did another internship. I did marketing. I did fundraising. And in 2008, the executive director started his own business and left. And I was handed a bucket, and that bucket was everything. And I was the new executive director.
You were handed a bucket, and that bucket was everything. It was a big bucket. It wasn't a big bucket.
It was a big bucket.
Here you go. You have everything.
So I started expanding our team, and I started to work on outreach and building a volunteer force. Probably spent the first 6 months just doing that, training people to help me, because it was 100% volunteer run. There were no staff. It was frowned upon 18 years ago. It was like 100% volunteer driven, and that's the way we're going to stay. And so I worked on recruiting people, got a leadership team in place, and so we started expanding outreach. We opened our first outreach center in 2014. I'm 100% volunteer, working full-time, going to school full-time. I have 2 grown boys. I fell in love with the organization because it was grassroots, and I'm an entrepreneur. So it was very entrepreneurial, and it was a challenge to me. And yeah, I never left. We grew from 1 center to 2 centers, to a 3rd center, and then COVID hit, and we closed the 2 centers, and we have 1 open where we have our food pantry in Costa Mesa now.
Oh, okay. Got it. So you're not far from me.
Yeah. So I watched the organization grow from 3 people to about 100 volunteers, and we had at our last year we had about 15 employees.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. So what, taking that is as I, have done a lot of consulting with smaller nonprofits as they're trying to help them figure out a growth plan and strategy. That's one of the hardest parts for small nonprofits, because there's a lot of reasons, but they get in, maybe a small mindset, or they don't have the strategy, they don't have the experience to know how to grow something or a business plan, that type of thing. What were the biggest challenges for you to take this thing that was so great but so sort of limited and start expanding it?
So I think it was it was a big plus that I was self-employed and I could manage a full-time load, like volunteering full-time to grow it. However, it also held me back because I was working 40 hours at another job. So
Sure.
it was like I was filling holes for a long time. So like from 2008 to 2014, we could have grown a lot faster had I been an employee.
Right.
And for me, it was always the mindset of we're volunteer driven. The money goes to the kids.
Yep.
We can't hire people. We had money because I had raised money. And
Sure.
it was, for me, it was when do we pull the trigger?
Right.
So I think that was one of the biggest challenge. Like I'm very conservative because I do finance.
Sure.
So it was hard.
Yeah.
I think that was a challenge. Funding is always a challenge. Schools don't have enough money to have on-site services. People, the perception of homelessness is not pretty. And kids get lumped into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges specifically with aside from just sort of the challenges that any nonprofit faces, but with dealing with the topic of homelessness, which has been so politicized, unfortunately, that it makes it difficult to actually deal with the problem that is actually solvable because it's been so, people have such strong opinions that aren't always backed up with facts or anything, and to overcome that and get people on board with that. So was it a challenge to convince your donor base or funders that that it was time to start spending money on staffing and that type of thing, or was it more your mindset, or both?
I probably held us back out of maybe a little bit of angst.
Yeah.
I didn't want to spend the money and fail.
Sure.
Because I felt that the kids needed it, right? So I ended up becoming an employee, and they had me down in 2010.
Okay.
Where I was just taking a small stipend, like minimal, very minimal, under $1,000 a month.
Oh man.
And then I actually became a real employee probably in 2016.
Okay. Got it.
But I think I held us back some. And then when I hired my first staff person before I hired myself.
Yeah.
That person went to our advisory board and said, we need to pay her so she can focus.
Yeah.
And so they were open to it. They voted, they said yes, and it was a done deal. It was probably more me. And then getting donors, there's another perception about nonprofits where people don't want to spend money on overhead. So on overhead, right? But do you want Microsoft's CEO to not be skilled or not make money and not have benefits to attract the best help? Exactly. It just doesn't make sense. This is a business.
Yep.
And so a lot of it is challenges changing the mindset.
Yeah. Even our own mindsets, right? Like we've been trained in that. We've been trained to think somebody on the podcast recently said, this is the only industry that is defined by what it is not, nonprofit. And that puts this in people's minds of like, there shouldn't be money. There shouldn't be, there shouldn't be profit. And the reality is, no, we want profit. We just don't keep the profit. We put it back into the programs, and it allows us to grow and allows us to develop the programs and help more people. But, to do that, we've got to run it like a business, and think with that mindset. That's how you grow a business. It's a business. It just has a different tax status.
Yeah. And so that was a challenge. And then there's a challenge like how to tell the story.
Yeah.
How to tell the story that shows the impact, that because some of it's intangible.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
We see it because we're doing the work, and we see changed attitudes, and we see growth and things like that. But it's hard sometimes to convey that to people where they're like, oh my gosh, that's profound.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
we see it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always, I mean, the bet, and that also storytelling, marketing, however you want to label it, is also considered overhead, and yet
Overhead, another expense.
right, and yet it's core to your mission. Like, you can't do it without bringing people into the story, making them aware so that they can donate and volunteer or whatever, and you can continue to do the job. And we've all been set up to think that this is that's bad somehow,
Yeah.
and how have you brought donors and volunteers even along in that mindset? Like, is it trainings? Is it just conversations you have, or is it just kind of moving ahead?
It's conversations. It's all of that.
Yeah.
And even with our staff, it's teaching them, it's educating them, giving them information, and then candid conversations. Like,
Sure.
they meet our advisory board, they meet the kids, we share mission moments with them. They help kids move so they get hands in and they can feel it too, and then it gets like it becomes real to them. So we invite partners in. We do these things called virtual lunches where a company can host a lunch with the kids, and we'll do a virtual meeting. They can share a skill. They can talk about their careers and how they got there. They could do something on anxiety, whatever it is, and we'll play. It could be just playing a game, Hangman, online with 20 kids, and they get to feel and experience that. And so it's a lot of that.
Yeah. The experience is, the thing that is going to be the most impactful in bringing somebody into the story, right? And into what you're doing. Unfortunately, not everybody can experience it and or won't until they're already sort of brought in some way. And so that's where that finding ways to get people's attention, to storytell, to bring them into it comes into play. What, as you're dealing with children experiencing homelessness here in Orange County, which is a strange, we've worked a lot with organizations dealing with homelessness here, and it's such a strange place to do that because there's sort of this mindset that it's Orange County, we don't have that problem, and then if we do, we don't want to talk about it, or politics gets in the way. So what's been effective in kind of bringing people into that story? What's been effective for you? What's worked? What's been compelling for people?
It's raising awareness. So we attend community meetings. We go to PTA meetings. It's all about educating them on what's happening in their communities because they're blind to it. These kids are invisible.
Yeah.
They're like, there's no way. There are 30,000 kids in the school system that are homeless or experiencing homelessness. And so it's a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings, a lot of in all our events, they get to, they hear about it, they see it, they get to meet the kids. And we try to bring them along. Our volunteer trainings, we share how we find the kids. Like, there's certain things. A lot of it is working closely with the schools. We help the schools identify these kids, right?
Oh,
and
that's
teaching
great.
their staff how to identify these things. And people don't even think about it. There could be a kid that their children are hanging around with that's experiencing homelessness, and here are the signs.
Yeah.
They're always at your house.
Yeah.
They're always at your house. They're sneaking in and out of your windows at night.
Yeah.
But no, it's raising awareness. The whole thing is raising awareness and breaking those perceptions.
Yeah.
Kids are invisible.
Right.
And even the providers in the county they're just starting now because of a lot of advocacy work.
Sure.
To if I write a grant, they go for the homeless provider that provides services to everyone. But there's these kids, they're a specific niche and their needs are so unique.
Yeah.
It's not the same service as an adult.
Right.
And people need to understand that. And we're trying to raise awareness about that and make sure they understand that. And slowly but surely, we're getting there.
Yeah.
It's slowly but surely raising awareness.
Do you find that when you can sit down with somebody and have that conversation at a PTA meeting or whatever it is, people are more open to, being receptive to that message than they are, in general?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Because once they hear it and you explain it and you maybe they meet a kid, they realize that it's not what they think. The guy on the corner that's schizophrenic screaming at you. You know what I mean? These are kids you wouldn't even know they were homeless. Because they blend in so well.
Well, yeah, and with kids, I mean, like I feel like, and a big problem in dealing, the work we've done with adults experiencing homelessness and the organizations, the providers there is, helping people realize that, these people have backgrounds. There's reasons for why they're, it's not just, they're, that whatever. People have these ideas of why they end up homeless. But with kids, there's nothing that's their fault in this. Right. There's no choice, so you don't even have to, you don't have that barrier of like, well, they chose to do drugs or they chose this or whatever. And kind of realizing like, yeah, but they're maybe they did, but they're human and they, right. But with kids, it's like, no, they're kids. They were put, they were put in this situation. And
they were put in this situation. They don't have the skills to navigate the situation.
Yeah.
And you know what? My famous line is, these are the kids that are going to take care of us when we're old. Yeah. When they're going to be running this country, we need to educate, train them up, and help them to be self-sufficient.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you found that the school systems have been easy to work with or difficult to work with? How's that been?
It's been a mix. Yeah. It's very, very hard to get in. It's very, very, it's a hard, difficult, painful process to get in. Once you're in, they're wonderful.
Okay.
For the most part to work with.
Yeah.
And they're just so happy to have the help. They have a lot of budget restrictions.
Sure.
And they're trying to do a lot with a little bit of money. So there's always that. Yeah. Like, we have to get paid. We used to do everything for our services are 100% free. Okay. But we ask that the school, if I have a full-time case manager on site, you've got to pay their salary.
Sure.
Because yeah.
But they've got budgets and they've got all that, they don't have a lot of, our schools are pretty severely underfunded in a lot of areas. So it's a system that is sort of not set up to make it easy for us to help people, unfortunately. Well, I'm so impressed with the way you have grown this organization, the way that you've kind of taken it from the small to a larger thing that is actually impacting more people. And because that, like I said, that's one of the hardest transitions, and a lot of nonprofits don't make it. They stay in that sort of small mindset, but this is a large problem. And that, I mean, overall, like, the nonprofit sector is out there solving the world's largest problems, and we're asking them to do it on a shoestring budget.
Or none, or nothing.
Or no budget, or volunteers. And it just doesn't make any sense. So the fact that you've persevered and figured it out and are pushing through that's always impressive. That's always great. And, and especially nice to hear that it's happening here in my community where I live. That's just,
exactly.
My kids are in school here, and I know that, they're around all this and their experience, they, are impacted by it. And so to have the services you're providing is amazing. If you had, as we sort of start to wrap up, what one like one learning that you're like, if you're in a not if you're in a nonprofit space, one thing that you've learned that you're like, you've got to know this. This is important. What would it be?
Well, one thing I learned, one thing I learned is there's a few things. There's patience. This is the hardest job I've ever done in my entire life. But it's so rewarding that you can't even imagine. When you see the impact and change in someone's life, it's amazing work. It's you have to have really good boundaries. That's another thing I learned from the programmatic side.
Yeah.
Boundaries are key. And as far as the organization, I mean, it's a business. It's run like a business. It needs all the same functionings. Instead of sales, we raise money.
Yeah.
And you need money to provide services, right? And I also learned, the big learning is prevention is key. And if we can stop it in the high school or the middle school and prepare these kids so they're successful, and have the life skills, because school doesn't teach life skills, they teach academics.
Right.
And
exactly.
that's what they're good at.
Yeah.
What we're good at is coming alongside and teaching those life skills like a parent would teach, because these kids don't have that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
prevention is key.
I'm curious if have you seen the documentary Uncharitable?
I didn't. I have the actual link because I got the email to watch that.
Yeah, you got to check it out. You're I mean, you're already talking the language of it, but it gives a lot more language, a lot more specific data and things on kind of backing up that argument of we've got to change the culture around nonprofits to allow them to do the things that they need to do to fix the problems of the world, and it's really inspired me. I mean, I kind of like you, already on that path, but then getting that more specifics and thinking it through and going, man, we got to start changing people's minds so that we can be effective is so important. Obviously with what you do, there's probably, aside from the schools, there's probably a lot of opportunities for collaboration with other nonprofits or with other organizations. How has that played out? Has that been a challenging thing, or has that been a really rewarding thing? What does that look like?
So we have a lot of great partnerships with cities, with other nonprofits. We are part of the Take Collaborative. We've been part of that since the beginning. It was, a couple of us at a table a few years back. And so it's really a great collaboration. We collaborate. We're part of the Family Solutions Collaborative. So we're an access point for our kids to get into the housing queue and the bed reservation system. So we have great collaborations. Last week we had an eyeglass clinic here with a partner. So
nice.
Yes, it helps us. Each of us does a part, and it helps us to use our money wisely, right?
Yeah.
So if I don't have to spend on glasses and I'm having a glass clinic, if I have a therapist here, we partner with, the Mustard Seed Ranch. We partner with different places for therapy, OMID, and there's another one at Pite. And they're nonprofits that we're referring people to. They're referring people to us. And this way we can provide wraparound services. It's definitely great to collaborate with the cities the same way. Question and answer sessions. They're doing surveying and planning and just being involved in the beginning of things, right? And having some kind of a voice.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, that's one thing that I find nonprofits sometimes find a challenge is collaboration. And yet we can all be so much more effective if we're able to do that. Sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Like you can't do it without that. But a lot of nonprofits there's that kind of scarcity mindset of like, well, if I,
Yes. My
something-
money's going to them. They're going to
Yes.
steal my programs.
Exactly.
That does happen sometimes, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, a few closing questions. Is there somebody in the nonprofit sector that you are inspired by who, if you could take somebody to lunch, who would it be?
It would probably be Sandy Sturgerson.
Who's that?
She's part of the Sturgerson Center.
Okay.
She is over this nonprofit called Festival of Children.
Okay.
And they own the Arts Center down in Santa Ana. I would want to go with her. She's a philanthropist. She runs that nonprofit that helps smaller children-based charities.
Yeah.
Just somebody that's
great.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And what's the thing in your job that brings you the most joy?
Seeing the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
That definitely is it. The kids. Yeah. When I get to spend time with the kids, they come in the office, they come for groceries, just spending a few minutes. Yesterday, I had a girl that I've known probably since she was 14 years old.
Yeah.
She graduated high school. That's like, I feel like the proud mama moments.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that's the best. Wow. Very cool. Well, I'm so excited for you, for what's happening with Stand Up for Kids and the future as you guys move ahead. Where can people find you, find more information about Stand Up for Kids, and connect?
Oh yeah, they can find us. Our website is www.standupforkids.org/Orange County. And there's upcoming news, there's events, our newsletter. They can get involved that way.
Cool.
And see what's happening.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Justine, thank you so much for being here. This is great. Yeah, like I said, I'm just lately I love interviewing people from all over the world, and it's been wonderful. But it's nice to talk to somebody in my own backyard that's doing great work in my own community, and that I get to kind of see the fruits of your labor. So that's really fun.
I agree. It's a great job. Like I said, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's the most fulfilling.
Usually that's how it works,
and I'm glad because we live here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We'll be in touch for sure.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Creating Good with Matt Barnes is recorded at Rogue Collective in beautiful Newport Beach, California. It's hosted and executive produced by me, Matt Barnes. Post-production is by our amazing friends over at Fame, the B2B podcast agency. Writing is by Matt Barnes and Taylor Bolanos from Rogue Creatives. Creative direction and design is overseen by Corey Hill of Rogue Creatives. Theme music is composed and performed by Jared Atherton of Chapters. Huge thanks to our amazing guests for joining us this episode, and thank you to all of you incredible listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, and I would imagine you did if you're still listening, so don't forget to help us spread some good by giving us a good review. Preferably like 5 stars, lots of really nice words. It's very helpful. Also, tell your friends and subscribe so we can come straight into your potholes each and every time we have a new episode. Take the Creating Good pledge on our website at creatinggood.co. We'll catch you next time. This has been a Rogue Creatives production.